The waters of the Strait of Hormuz boiled under a rain of high explosive ordnance in mid-March 2026. The night sky above the Persian Gulf was entirely illuminated by the exhaust trails of thousands of anti-ship cruise missiles and suicide drones. After months of enduring relentless systematic aerial bombardments executed by the United States Air Force, the armed forces of Iran initiated an all-out asymmetric counteroffensive. The Supreme Commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps issued the directive to mobilize over 950,000 elite troops, concentrating the entirety of their naval, missile, and special operations assets directly into the world's most critical energy choke point. Within a span of merely 48 hours, the maritime theater transformed into a chaotic zone of total destruction. Iranian tactical units unleashed absolute devastation using hundreds of fast attack-armed speedboats, swarming in highly coordinated formations to systematically overwhelm naval radar and tracking systems. Above the churning waves, loitering munitions and kamikaze drones descended like a mechanical plague upon the United States naval vanguard. Heavy coastal missile barrages rained down with brutal precision, striking directly at the defensive perimeters of United States guided missile destroyers and amphibious assault ships. Multiple high-value vessels sustained critical impacts, their steel superstructures burning fiercely against the dark horizon. The air grew thick with the toxic scent of burning jet fuel, melted armor, and the metallic tang of blood. The close-in weapon systems of the United States Navy roared incessantly, firing thousands of depleted uranium rounds per minute in a desperate bid to shred the incoming aerial and surface threats. Yet the sheer volume and velocity of the Iranian swarm tactics pushed the American defensive capabilities to their absolute mechanical limits. Warships maneuvered frantically through the flaming debris of destroyed Iranian fast attack craft, while incoming supersonic warheads violently breached the armored hulls of American vessels. The catastrophic loss of advanced hardware and human life on both sides underscored the terrifying reality of modern maritime warfare. The naval engagements dragged on relentlessly, day and night without end, turning the strategic maritime corridor into a graveyard of burning iron and shattered naval doctrine. As the United States Navy bled in the fiery waters of the Strait, a critical strategic question emerged from the ashes of the burning fleet. What deep-rooted geopolitical machinations and cascading strategic failures had driven these two formidable military powers into this inescapable vortex of absolute annihilation? Jaro, Doi Jai La Joan Hai, Nguyen Han, Juak Viet Theo to Hop Phong Kach Magjin Lanam Kong Bay, Gok Hin Bochi Huiket Hop, Quan Sutrian Thong. Jafan Tik Chiao Sao Chien Luok Va Boy Kan Chin Tri. The origins of this catastrophic clash lay buried in decades of insurmountable geopolitical friction and the relentless pursuit of regional hegemony. For years, the United States Central Command had meticulously wargamed the complete neutralization of Iranian strategic capabilities. The escalating sanctions and clandestine proxy conflicts of the early 21st century eventually culminated in a preemptive, multi-month aerial campaign initiated by the United States. The strategic objective was absolute: permanently dismantle the underground nuclear infrastructure and the extensive ballistic missile network of Iran, before they could irreversibly alter the balance of power in the Middle East. However, the Iranian High Command had long anticipated this doctrine of overwhelming preemptive force. The leadership of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps understood that competing in a conventional, symmetrical war against the United States Armed Forces was a tactical impossibility. Instead, they weaponized their unique geography, the Strait of Hormuz, a highly restricted maritime choke point responsible for a massive percentage of the daily global energy supply, became their ultimate strategic trump card. By executing a pre-planned comprehensive naval blockade, Iran aimed to trigger an immediate global economic collapse, thereby forcing the international community to constrain the American offensive. The United States Department of Defense, recognizing this asymmetric maneuver as an unacceptable threat to global stability, refused to concede. The highest echelons of the United States government authorized a massive kinetic escalation, determined to shatter the Iranian blockade through sheer attrition and overwhelming firepower. This fatal clash of uncompromising national interests and rigid military doctrines inevitably transformed a simmering regional standoff into a raging kinetic inferno. And as the final diplomatic channels disintegrated, The immense operational weight of the United States military apparatus pivoted violently back to the burning waters of the Persian Gulf, preparing to unleash a second, far more devastating wave of retribution. The tactical calculus of the United States military dictated an immediate, overwhelming kinetic response to the Iranian maritime blockade. Moving sequentially through late March 2026, the United States Department of Defense authorized the full-scale deployment of division-level operational assets to fundamentally break the siege. 2 complete carrier strike groups were urgently dispatched from global staging areas, maneuvering rapidly to establish offensive firing positions within the Gulf of Oman. Operating in direct support of this massive naval armada, a reinforced expeditionary force comprising over 200,000 heavily armed Marines and integrated naval personnel was deployed into a sprawling, multi-layered counterattack formation. The strategic imperative shifted entirely from regional containment to the absolute eradication of the entire Iranian coastal defense grid. Chronologically, the American counteroffensive commenced with a relentless, heavily coordinated air superiority campaign, meticulously designed to blind and paralyze the Iranian anti-access and area denial networks. Squadrons of 5th-generation stealth strike fighters sortied continuously around the clock from the armored flight decks of the nuclear-powered supercarriers. These sophisticated platforms, operating in flawless synchronization with high-altitude electronic warfare command aircraft, systematically hunted down and wiped out every active Iranian firepower cluster situated along the rugged mountainous coastline. The skies above the Strait of Hormuz roared continuously with the deafening thrust of afterburners as thousands of precision-guided munitions and bunker-busting bombs fell like a mechanical rain upon Iranian early warning radar installations and heavily fortified missile silos. However, the execution of this tactical maneuver proved exceptionally costly in terms of both advanced hardware and human life. The Iranian defending forces, heavily entrenched within a complex coastal archipelago, utilized deeply buried, pre-surveyed launch sites to unleash devastating retaliatory volleys. As United States amphibious assault divisions pushed aggressively closer to the Iranian mainland attempting to secure vital beachheads, they sailed directly into a dense, highly lethal web of overlapping kill zones. The ensuing close-quarters naval engagements were characterized by ruthless, high-casualty attrition. During the chaotic final days of March, a primary United States guided missile cruiser was ambushed by an unprecedented synchronized swarm of low-flying stealth drones and hypersonic coastal cruise missiles. Despite the frantic employment of advanced electronic countermeasures and automated defense cannons, 3 heavy, high-explosive warheads successfully breached the starboard hull of the warship. The catastrophic secondary internal explosions instantly claimed the lives of over 340 United States sailors, transforming the multi-billion-dollar vessel into a crippled, burning monument to the sheer brutality of naval combat. Conversely, the Iranian military sustained catastrophic, irreversible losses. Entire battalions of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps naval infantry were methodically vaporized. Over 2,000 Iranian fast attack craft and heavily armed speedboats were tracked and mercilessly destroyed by American aerial assets long before they could maneuver into effective firing range. Thousands of Iranian elite maritime operators perished violently within the fiery wreckage of their shattered coastal bunkers, buried alive under thousands of tons of collapsed concrete and twisted steel rebars. The simultaneous, unabated air and naval battles caused the very geological foundations beneath the Strait of Hormuz to shake violently, turning the once vital commercial waterway into a toxic floating graveyard of burning crude oil, ruined military hardware, and shattered human remains. While the waters of the Strait of Hormuz burned, the United States Central Command executed a ruthless masterstroke of multi-domain warfare, violently tearing open a second definitive theater of operations. The strategic objective was no longer mere containment. It was the absolute decapitation of the Iranian state. Late March 2026 witnessed an airborne invasion of a scale entirely unseen in the 21st century. Under the impenetrable cover of a heavily jammed electromagnetic spectrum, over 160,000 elite United States paratroopers and mechanized airborne infantry were dropped directly into the sprawling, densely populated urban expanse of Tehran. Before the first American boot touched the shattered asphalt, The night sky above the Iranian capital was completely dominated by the terrifying silhouettes of B-52 Stratofortresses in B-2 Spirit stealth bombers. Relentless, highly synchronized strategic bombing runs systematically pulverized the Supreme Command nodes, fortified military installations, and subterranean logistics hubs of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Whole city blocks were instantaneously leveled by massive, precision-guided bunker-busting ordnance, transforming the historic metropolis into a chaotic, burning labyrinth of pulverized concrete, shattered glass, and twisted steel. The immediate deployment of the United States airborne forces triggered a catastrophic urban meat grinder. The defending Iranian army, mobilizing a desperate, highly motivated force of over 1 million regular soldiers and hardened paramilitary units, entrenched themselves deeply within the ruined infrastructure of the capital city. Every shattered neighborhood, every collapsed apartment complex, and every subterranean subway tunnel rapidly devolved into a hyper-lethal zone of close-quarters combat. United States battalion commanders aggressively pushed their heavy armored columns and mechanized infantry through the debris-choked streets, heavily supported by continuous, devastating close air support from loitering attack helicopters and weaponized aerial drones. The Iranian defenders, fueled by an uncompromising warrior spirit, fought ferociously for every single meter of their sovereign territory. They utilized deeply concealed anti-tank guided missile ambushes, complex networks of improvised explosive devices, and massive, relentless infantry counterattacks to exact a horrific toll on the advancing American vanguard. Blood pooled in the ruined avenues as thousands of soldiers from both nations perished in savage, room-to-room firefights, where tactical supremacy was measured in mere inches of ground gained. Despite the fanatical and deeply entrenched resistance, the sheer, unrelenting operational tempo, and the overwhelming, perfectly synchronized combined arms doctrine of the United States military began to irrevocably fracture the Iranian defensive lines. Vital communications between the Iranian High Command and their frontline brigade commanders were permanently severed by aggressive, multi-layered American electronic warfare. Ammunition depots were systematically vaporized, and casualty evacuation pipelines completely ceased to exist under the relentless aerial bombardment. As the heavy American armored spearheads violently penetrated the heavily fortified inner defensive rings of Tehran, the structural integrity of the Iranian military apparatus reached its absolute breaking point. The strategic narrative of a unified national defense rapidly dissolved into the terrifying chaotic reality of a total, irreversible, systemic collapse. By early April 2026, after more than 3 weeks of continuous devastating urban and naval combat, the Iranian national defense grid suffered a total, irreversible collapse. The once formidable organized resistance of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps completely disintegrated into a chaotic, uncoordinated retreat across the rugged mountainous terrain. Entire armored divisions and mechanized infantry brigades were permanently shattered. Surviving battalion commanders were forced to abandon heavily fortified military bases, critical underground ballistic missile silos, and vast stretches of sovereign territory just to escape the relentless American aerial pursuit. The United States Armed Forces, having sustained heavy casualties but emerging tactically victorious, fully secured the smoking pulverized ruins of Tehran. Simultaneously, United States naval fleets established absolute maritime dominance over the heavily contested oil-stained waters of the Strait of Hormuz. The sheer scale of physical destruction and human sacrifice was completely unprecedented in the 21st century. Tens of thousands of elite soldiers from both nations lay dead amidst the rubble, and hundreds of billions of dollars of advanced military hardware were reduced to scorched, unrecognizable scrap metal. The geopolitical consequences of this devastating conflict fundamentally and violently reshaped the strategic landscape of the Middle East. The absolute military defeat of Iran effectively decapitated its supreme political command structure and completely dismantled its regional hegemony, leaving a terrifying, unpredictable vacuum of power in its wake. The United States successfully achieved its ultimate strategic objective of securing the global energy supply chain, but the astronomical cost in human lives and the total annihilation of a major nation-state served as a chilling, permanent testament to the unforgiving brutality of modern conventional warfare. Disclaimer: this narrative is a geopolitical and military analysis based on simulated combat scenarios. It is designed strictly for educational purposes and does not promote or glorify armed conflict. If you found this tactical breakdown informative, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and leave your thoughts on the future of global security in the comments section below.